Hello. Hello, everyone. Ada, I think you're on mute. Awesome.
Good afternoon.
Hi. How are you? We've got some feedback coming in, but I think we're good. Okay, so we'll just kick off real quick with some intros. Um, I am actually dialing in from South Africa,
If you
Johannesburg. My
can,
name is
there's
Labade.
video so that I know that you can see.
I
Awesome, Lori. Awesome, Dave.
EXP CEO. I think we're having a little bit of feedback. I'll check with the team. Ezra, can you check? Thank you. Thank you. I'll hand over to Ada. Do you want to introduce us? Tell us where you're
Sure.
dialing in
Fuck,
from.
fuck, fuck, fuck.
Hi, guys. Maybe you get more followers that way.
I'm going to mute panel three.
Please.
Okay, that's us.
I can hear JR's voice.
JR, we can hear you. Do you want to, JR? Are you there? I think we can start. I think they're having technical difficulties at the back, but I think we can start. Thanks,
Okay, great.
everybody. It's great to be on studio. Like I said, my name is Carol Abade. I'm the group CEO for EXP. I'm currently dialing in from Johannesburg. And I'll hand over to Ada ladies first.
I'm good. Wow.
Ooh, I think we're hearing another panel, but hi. Can you hear me, Carol?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
Great. And I think Adito is having problems with sound, but hopefully he will.
Live broadcast. I'm glad that we're able to sort out the network issue. So this is the Bridge Summit, and to everyone who is joining in from everywhere across the world and whatever platforms that you're connected from, welcome.
Are we on? Ada, I think. Oh,
I know. Anytime I try going, it's a
are
bit
we on? Yeah, sounds like we're getting some feedback.
yeah.
Ada,
I know. Anytime I try going, it's a
are
bit
we on? Yeah, sounds like we're getting some feedback.
I know. Anytime I try going.
Okay,
Okay.
there we are.
Woo! Okay, great. There's just a technical hiccup. Carol, thanks for doing this. I am Ada. Pleasure to meet you. I'm calling in from Lagos, Nigeria. I run a business in the food space. I have a chain of restaurants and a juice product focused on local sourcing from our farmers right here in Nigeria. I'm also an angel investor, so I get to see a number of startups across different sectors. And it's really exciting what's going on right now in Africa. Great to be here.
Oh, fantastic. And Mr. Ade, you're still on mute. You might want to unmute and check if that's working now.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's.
No, it's not unmuting. If you can just look at the bottom, the buttons at the bottom, your mute button, your mic, not yet.
Maybe try using the laptop directly and not your headphone. Hopefully, it should come through. Okay.
Okay, I think we'll just carry on as Ade is trying to get his sound sorted out, because we are live. So the first thing is, let's clear the MBA story, because everybody's been asking, how can you say the MBA is useless? So I think there's a caveat on this one. The question should be, do you need an MBA to succeed as an entrepreneur? And my answer is absolutely not. And I feel that there are some things for which an MBA is valuable, and there are some things that an MBA is lacking in order to be able to be sufficiently, I suppose, in totality for all entrepreneurs, not just African entrepreneurs. But I think most specifically, there are very specific challenges in the African continent that the MBA doesn't always cover. What's your view?
There absolutely, but there are many things that are good about an MBA. Obviously, it just really gives you the level of confidence to think, that you can just go conquer the world. But in the context of Africa, when you do try to conquer Africa, you're very quickly eating humble pie. It is an interesting one, because I didn't even think I was going to be an entrepreneur while I was doing my MBA. So I wasn't necessarily taking the classes for that. I did do a few classes, but not like full on. But when I did decide to become an entrepreneur, I'm trying to bring out all my notes from school and reading this framework, that this is how it should work. And I tried to do it immediately in my business, and things maybe backfire. There definitely is the Africa context. There definitely is a unique creativity of thought that African entrepreneurs must have to deal with the things that come your way. I'm sure you feel the same way, Carol.
Exactly. In fact, I think the question most entrepreneurs or people wanting to go to business school must ask themselves at this point is, what is the most valuable knowledge that I need to become a successful entrepreneur? If you can tick that box on the most valuable knowledge you need, then go get that knowledge. And that knowledge isn't always in the form of, exactly. So it's not useless. Let's just say, all of you who've got MBAs, fantastic. We love having you. It comes with a huge amount of skill, discipline, and competency. But now let's go back to entrepreneurship in Africa, and share some experiences around what do you think are some of the most important skills that an entrepreneur operating in the continent needs to seriously consider?
Yeah. Carol, I think I mentioned earlier on that creativity of thought. I think that's the first thing I would throw out there. You just really have to think about the context we're operating in, and the things you learn in those case studies that are usually predominantly case studies from other parts of the world, and not always Africa-based case studies. When you come back to operate, you just have to be very creative about thinking of how to adapt it to the context where we operate in. I think the second thing, you hear it a lot when they talk about entrepreneurs in Africa, is that resilience. It is so true. I think a few people have heard about the story of when my first store that was opened in Lagos, the bustling city of over 20 million people. We were hiring young people. We were all talking about agriculture and food as the future of Nigeria, of Africa. And I'm a woman. We were talking about gender and empowering women. And I was a woman being empowered through my business. And yet, you had a government that came one day with bulldozers and said, oh, your landlord didn't have permission. And you're like, what the heck? And they raised it to the ground. Wow. Literally wobbles. That was my first store. We were only 2 weeks old. It was like the place to be. People were talking about it. There was a buzz, and I know how I suffered, really, Carol. I was sitting there every day with the carpenters and the electricians, trying to get that place open, pumping money in, all my savings. And in 2 weeks, the government of a country could do that, the state government. And so that's not something that you would ever even hear about in an MBA class. That's not something that they're preparing you for in terms of being an entrepreneur, going out there to conquer, as I mentioned, and thinking through all these scenarios. Scenario planning in that case would never have had the fact that the government of the country will come bulldoze your store. So, that resilience continues to be paramount as I think about African entrepreneurs. Just be ready to take those hits and punches and pick yourself up and keep going, because there remains the opportunity.
That's fantastic. And I think we'll come back to how you got through that story. But Ade is here with us. Thank you for getting that fixed. I think we'll take you a little bit backwards. Ade, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're dialing in from.
Thanks, Carol. Ada, nice to meet you guys. I'm very happy to be on the panel with you. So I'm from Benin. I founded RideCom nearly 10 years ago. RideCom is a technology company. We build software for customer experience management issues that most businesses in the world, and especially in Africa, face. And then we also support business through our professional services around customer service and experience management. So most of what we do is providing a system and solutions such as feedback and customer interaction management, customer service software. And we've learned the hard way, of how doing business in Africa can be completely different what you learn in an MBA classroom. So yeah, I'll be very happy to share with you guys what I've been through the last 10 years and then how we managed to overcome those different challenges.
Okay, so was your MBA useless?
Of course, my MBA was useless because listen, let me put it that way.
You spent all that money.
The MBA was useless because when you want to swim, when you want to learn to swim, they put you in water, right? That's how you learn to swim. And so my MBA was sort of learning swimming out of the water.
Right.
And then they jump in the water right after that.
Make the MBA streetwise. We've got to bring it back to.
That's when you learn how the system works. You have to be on the ground.
Ade, we lost you a little bit. Ade, are you still there?
Yes.
And Ade's here. It's confusing.
Yeah.
Ade.
Yeah, I'm here. So you have to be on the ground, basically. You have to learn how to build and run a business by doing it, not in the classroom, because there is a difference between what you learn in the classroom and then what you experience.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, you're just saying that the difference between the classroom, what you learn, and what you experience in real life. Absolutely.
Definitely. Carol, can you hear me?
Oh, not sure. I think we've lost her.
She can't hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit slow, but no, Ade, I completely agree with you. I still remember sitting there and doing. I just can't. I'm thinking about some of even the context and those cases. I mentioned it earlier that we need a lot more cases that are from young entrepreneurs on the continent that are being shared in business schools, not just in Africa, but across the world, so that we really get those true stories and give a flavor for what it's like.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
It's just sometimes it's too painful for somebody to actually relieve that story. And so those stories don't get told as case studies, because I can imagine, Ada, if you had to start writing a book about that 2-week experience and reliving it all over again, could that be a reason why we're not seeing enough of these experiences?
No, I think we need to relive it. About 2 years ago, my business school, the Kellogg School of Management, actually did a mini case study on that experience. But the class was a specific class. It was a class on doing business in emerging markets. So it was just tailored to telling those sort of stories of what it's like, which I think is fantastic. It's a new class. So as long as we can get more business schools, again, across Africa and the rest of the world, telling these stories, as difficult as it might be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so what pulled
yeah.
you out? How did you get out of it?
So in my case, Toya, Ade, before you came, I was telling the story of when my store was bulldozed, and what pulled me out of it, I still, the founder of Reach, JR, who's a friend of mine, I still remember him coming, because the incident happened the day before my birthday, and he came with a little cake on my birthday, to just get me out of the rut, out of the depression, out of the sadness I was going through. So I think the love from friends and family, but more so the love from our customers. Technology is amazing. You have people who heard the story, who saw the video of that bulldozer going into the store, and they set up a website, a giving website, donate to Newly, friends of Newly, and people rallied around, just because we were able to have, not just the website set up, but even a payments platform for people to send money through. So I think the fact that we had so much love, so much care, and people rallying around us and understanding the plight of an entrepreneur operating in such an environment, I think that helped, and that helped to pull me out. That helped me to, that resilience I spoke about earlier on, to just get up again. We started from my kitchen. We started doing orders and sending things out, and until we were able to get back on our feet.
Wow. It's such an inspiration to hear that, because I think you raised two things that also resonate with me. The idea that within, I think, the entrepreneurship circle in the continent, the one thing that really stands out is the amount of help that's available from strangers, people you don't know, you can call on to and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, I'd like to come talk to you. And you'd get a meeting, you'd get a response to an email. I think that's such a powerful part of our continent. The network that we build that you can call on to. And I found that experience a lot as I was operating and opening up businesses across the continent, is I would just show up in a country with a list of names and numbers from people. Say, well, call so-and-so. So-and-so doesn't know me from a bar of soap. And I'd say, hey, this is who I am. I got your number from Ade, and I'm in town. And they'd meet up with me, and they opened so many doors for me. And I'm forever grateful for those sort of connections. I struggle to imagine that this is possible outside of Africa. I am sure there are people with exception stories, but I think in Africa, it's something we can always tap into and encourage young people starting to run a business to call on to the people like you who've had that experience, because it's there.
Yeah.
Ade, what's your story?
So I started actually started Rightcom in South Africa. That's the first country where I started building on the business, and I couldn't raise funds to kickstart it. So I moved from South Africa, and then I landed in Nigeria, hoping that it's going to be better for me to kick off the business. So that's 10 years, 12 years ago. Like funding, it was a bit more difficult to get funding than it is today back then, especially in a software environment. And then I'm in the B2B space, not consumer software such as e-commerce platform or payment platform as trending today. So landed in Nigeria. Extremely difficult to have the right connection at the right time, and then I was burning cash. I was burning savings that I had, and I started with my savings, but I needed to inject more cash in order to kind of accelerate. But then I have to leave Nigeria because of that. So again, you have to be driven by something that's beyond the environment you live in. Right, and then believe that what you want to put out there has a strong value. So I moved out from Nigeria and then landed in Ghana and finally managed to get this ball rolling. And then we got our first clients some 11 years ago. And then what shocked me back then was that we have been able to win an international RFP launched by a company that was doing over 50 billion revenue and more than 200,000 employees in the world. And back then we were just 10 people, like less than 10 people. So being able to win in that space and beat all the global businesses that were playing in the same space as Rightcom, it kind of made me feel back then as when you have an expertise, when you're good at what you're good at, somebody who needs your service, somebody who needs your product, if they find you, they will go with you. And then it took us a lot of resilience, trying again after failing in South Africa, after failing in Nigeria, after failing in Ghana first time. It took us a lot of time and then a lot of money wasted, by the way. A lot of saving that I spent, hundreds of thousands that I lost. But then big lesson that I learned after it, and it doesn't matter how small you are, there is a window of opportunity, and then you have to be resilient. You have to be very persistent in pursuing that dream that you have, and that's what made me through that first, let me say, bunch of challenges that we have the first years. But of course, you have more challenges, every single year, the different. But then you learn from joking about those challenges, and then you get even more better prepared to face whatever comes whatever comes your way. Then.
That's fantastic. I think Ade raises a second learning, out of this session, is that failure and invention are like your eyebrows. They come together. You're not going to get rid of it. And in fact, we kind of say jokingly that, failure is a good thing. Nobody likes to feel it, but it has really powered the ability to be resilient in the continent. And so I always remember, I'm not going to get rid of one eyebrow and think the other one's going to have to get painted in. They stay together and we've got to make it happen. And those two things, failure and invention, always come together. But let's talk a little bit about your journey as, business entrepreneurs. Like what have you seen as the biggest skill set that you needed to develop quickly? What's the biggest muscle that you're always exercising?
So my biggest skill my biggest skill when I started, and then still my biggest skill, I think, is the sales. I've been able to sell Rightcom to businesses. I've been able to sell our products. I have a background of B2B sales in selling to large organizations in the world, so that helped me a lot. I know how to handle conversation with of CS level people, and then these are very long sales cycle, and then it's not the same as selling a chocolate to a consumer in your shop. And I'm very strong at that. So
just as hard.
Well, it doesn't take 2 years to a consumer to make his mind if he want to eat the chocolate or not. But it would definitely take 2 years to a huge organization to make a decision, sign with you. Yeah. So that's what I'll highlight as one of my best skills, and then also something that I did transfer to my sales team. Yeah.
Nice.
In addition to that, Ade, I think for me, Carol, it's in many ways giving people a reason to believe, right? A reason to believe in me, in the business. And that cuts across the customers who come in every day. Do they believe in the brand? What am I doing? And being able to work to ensure that there's an authenticity in what we're delivering, to ensure that they do believe and they stick with us. Or is it my team, giving them a reason to follow and believe in this vision to build? It's not easy. So being able to manage that, I think, is something that that muscle that I keep working at, because it's what would set us apart and what would ensure that there's sustainability and that we stand the test of time in this market.
Yeah. I also
Fantastic.
think I agree with that. Like for me, I find that, the messy side of the business is dealing with people all the time. Whether you're dealing with the regulator, the government comes and raises down your store. I had a similar experience. Is one day we came and the council decided that our office was in a residential area and just closed off the office. Like everybody showed up at 8 o'clock and they couldn't get into the office. No notice, nothing. And understanding how to deal with those situations, um, understanding how to manage people in the context of the continent, given our different cultures and
Yes.
our different traditions that come to play in the workplace, and also that it's a struggle. It's hard work for everybody, for the entrepreneur, for the employee, for the regulator. It's hard work for everybody. And I find that that side of the business has been possibly for me the biggest thing that I have had to consciously develop as a skill set, is really managing and understanding people at all those different levels, to be able to get the best out of them. Because I think that, you get to a point where your success is very much dependent on the success of the other people around you.
Absolutely.
I think those.
Carol, do you want us to take some of
I
the
think there's.
questions?
Yeah, I see there's a couple that are asking, what's the greatest support you've gotten as an entrepreneur?
So I will let Ada speak.
Okay, I'll add maybe I'll merge the other question as well on government support, because I'm someone who, as an entrepreneur, I've been very vocal, criticizing the government when they don't do enough for young entrepreneurs trying to build in this country or in our countries. And part of that advocacy and speaking out at some point, especially after COVID, and trying to build after lockdowns and places were shut down and revenues just disappear overnight. At the time, the Nigerian government was only doing less than 1% of the GDP in support to support the economy, compared to other countries, and even in the developing world doing nearly up to 10%. So at the time, the government eventually did do something, and they supported entrepreneurs with loans, with a little bit of money, but it was something, especially at a time like that. Everything counted, and these were cheap loans, low interest rates, long, a nice moratorium. So that is something we need more of, not just when there's a crisis like COVID. I think the government still needs to do a little bit more, and just in general, the support I get from, I think, Carol, you mentioned it, just the community of people going through similar things. I think has been one of the biggest things for me, that I can pick up the phone and call and get guidance. And for those who don't have a network or don't have the people they can call, I just hope that we can keep building platforms, especially even these conversations we're having now at today's summit, to ensure that people build the connections that they need to thrive.
Excellent. Ade, what about you? What would you tell young people looking to set up business in Africa now?
So I'll tell them first and foremost to start, because the continent does need a lot of entrepreneurs, and then to look for mentors, to look for people who have been there before them, not necessarily in their field, and that's one of the most valuable assets a young entrepreneur will have at his early stage. Surround yourself with people who can help you do the right thing at the right time. It doesn't matter how good or how smart you are. You need people who have been there before you if you really want to go far.
That's an African proverb. I think we can end there with it. It says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, take people along with you. And I think we've run out of time, guys. This conversation can go on for a long time. And maybe we will have a part 2. We'll ask JR for a part 2, because I think they are really valuable lessons and more that we can share with entrepreneurs going forward. But it was really, really fantastic. Thank you, Ada, for that experience. You must write a book. Thank you, Ade, for
Thank you.
again sharing with us. I didn't even know that you had hopped 3 countries and just stayed on the course. That's
Yeah.
that's really invaluable information. So we're looking for a streetwise MBA course for
Yes.
Sure.
African students.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
With the reality. Yes.
Fantastic.
This is
Awesome.
great. Thank you, everyone.
So, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Great to be connected with you today. My name is Afua Osei, and today we're going to talk about partnerships for your business. Can you do me a favor and in the chat right now, tell me if you have ever thought about working with corporate partners or working with corporate clients. I want to see where people are coming from and whether or not this is something that you have practiced or you have experienced before. So let me know if one, you have thought about doing corporate partnerships, or two, you've never thought about it before. And we are going to get started with our presentation today. We're going to get started. Great. So here we go. So a little bit about me. My name is Afua. I have lived, worked, and traveled to more than 40 countries. Some interesting things about me. I love Jesus, Mango, hardcover books, and my niece Octavia, who is 2 years old. A lot of people know me from She Leads Africa, also known as Motherland Mogul Media, and it was a community that I first had the idea for back in 2012 while I was a graduate student. 9 years later, our community reaches more than 800,000 people. We've hosted events all across the continent and the diaspora. And in my capacity as CEO and head of sales and partnerships, I spent a lot of time working with corporate partners. Some of our favorite brands like Netflix, Samsung, Estee Lauder, Airbnb, Facebook, L'Oreal, Google, etc., etc. So somehow I convinced these companies to give me money. And I promise you, I'm actually not even that friendly. So just imagine what you could do with a smile and a solid plan. So that's what we're going to talk about, is how I would do it if I was starting all over again and I was starting from scratch, the things that I would care about and the things that would be important to me. First of all, if you don't remember anything else from today's workshop, I want you to remember that the most important thing for you to do is to be a problem solver. Whether you're in business or in your career, you want to solve problems. You want to fix a problem that others cannot solve themselves. And two, you want to impact a number that really matters to them. In the chat, let me know what you think about a problem that really matters to somebody. And that could be increasing the revenue, that could be increasing customer satisfaction, that can be reducing employee turnover. There are so many different types of numbers that are important. So let me know in the chat right now, what is a number, right? Let me know what is a number that really matters to you, or in the work that you do that really matters to people. I want to see like your comments. I want to see your chat. I want to see what you think, because if you're focused on how you can be a problem solver to other people, that changes the game. It changes how you're able to communicate. It changes how you're able to talk about your value and what you can bring. So you want to think about, how can I be a problem solver and how can I solve this problem in a number that's measurable? So brainstorm, and I know you will have a worksheet. So in your worksheet, I want you to write down this question for you to work on after the workshop. But how can you use your skills, your talents, and your expertise to fix a problem that is important to people and they want to pay for it? I put those two things because they're important. Sometimes we care about problems that aren't top priorities to other people. And if they're not a top priority, then they're not really going to pay it any mind. And the second thing is, sometimes we're working on problems that people don't want to pay for. And they can be super important to you, but if people don't want to pay for it, then it's not going to be a viable business opportunity. So it's important and they want to pay for it. Now, there are three major ways to build businesses. There's direct to consumer. That's something that we're very familiar with. Like, you go to the supermarket, you go to the market, they're buying it one-to-one. There's direct to enterprise, and an example of that is Shopify, in that they serve other businesses. There are some businesses that only work with other businesses. They can't sell to you if you're an individual. So let's say you wanted to buy oil, right? Or you wanted to buy fuel. You're not going to buy a giant drum of fuel. You're not going to buy 100 generators. You're not going to buy 100 kg of rice. You're not going to do that. That's a wholesale. They're going to sell that to a business, and then the business will break it down into smaller parts to sell it to the individual. So business to business or direct to enterprise. And there are some people that sell direct to government or international institutions. And of course, you can have a business that packages and sells to different segments. But today, we're just going to talk about direct to enterprise. So I think many of us are familiar with Dropbox. They are a data storage company. They have products that are just for consumers. They're smaller. They have products that are for enterprise, professional, and business. And then they have products that are for large organizations and institutions. Now, I want you to think about organizations spend millions on external staff, consultants, experts, and products to help solve their problems. So why not you? Why not you? You absolutely can do it. And I really want more of us to be thinking about enterprise or corporate clients because it's so valuable. And I just want to do a little caveat. When I talk about corporate partnerships or partnerships in that way, I'm referring to business to business. I'm referring to working corporate clients. And the reason why this can be so important for your business model is that you can plan in advance, so you can forecast your revenue. You can do bulk purchases, so you're selling more products or services at once. You also have less customer support and online marketing. So in case you're like, I don't want to be doing Reels, I don't want to be doing TikTok, I don't want to be doing all this content, this can be another avenue for you. And lastly, opportunities for longer term contracts and high value referrals. Many times these contracts are 6 months, 9 months, a whole year. And so you're not always looking for new clients all the time. So I hope you all are seeing like, wow, okay, there's something here. I think I should take a look at it. It could be valuable to me for my business. Now, I want you to remember that there are opportunities in every single field. It does not matter what you're doing. There is a corporate opportunity there. Selling to your audience, recruiting, understanding your demographic, achieving change, branded products, creating content, public image. Like these are just some of the initial ones that I brainstormed like this. But I promise you, whatever work that you're doing, there is a problem for you to solve in that field. And all you need to do is have a solid offer that speaks to that corporate client and not just one-to-one consumers. So I want you to do some brainstorming. So in your worksheet, these are the next questions for you to write down there. What is the major problem that you can help an organization solve? And who is the person in that organization that needs the most help with this? Now, this is important because a lot of businesses, a lot of people will be like, you know what, I want to work with Paystack, right? Let's say you want to work with Paystack. You like the company, they're innovative, they're in fintech, and like, okay, I want to work with Paystack. But what does Paystack actually need? What's the problem you can help them with? Not something generic, and it shouldn't be, oh, Paystack needs more customers. That's too generic. Be specific. And then who in the company has that as an important task for them, okay? Who really cares about that? And maybe it's their head of marketing. Maybe it's their head of sales. Maybe it's their human resources officer. Maybe it's the CEO. But you want to really think about who in that organization you want to talk to. It's not enough to have a big company name. You want to dig deeper. So after we brainstorm about the problems that we want to solve, we then want to think about how do we actually make money from it? Because it's not enough to just see a problem. You want to create a compelling offer that is a clear process and a solution, right? The process, this is how I'm going to help you solve it. And the solution, this is how I'm going to make your business better. Most businesses, this is also a key page if you want to screenshot it. Most businesses are just offering a mix and match of the same core elements: knowledge, experiences, expertise, products, community. For the most part, that's really all people need. So here's some examples of what that may look like for you. Knowledge, your ability to take your insight and your information to solve a problem. Consulting, training, writing, being a creator. Experiences, right? Right now, we're in an experience live. This could solve a problem. It's solving a problem for you because you want access to this information, but it also could be helpful to any brand partners that want to connect with people like you. So that typically an experience can be an email, a podcast, social media, webinars, panels, keynote talks. And of course, there are products. A lot of brands and companies need products. Limited edition, curated, so designed just for them, tailored, like those products that suit their specific needs. So this is just a quick brainstorming. But ultimately, what you do and what you can offer is going to fall into a category that's similar to this. Brainstorm. So on your worksheet, write down this question. Based on the problem that you want to help that organization or that company solve, how can you position your skills, talents, and expertise into a compelling offer? And a compelling offer is something that understands what's important to them, that is measurable in terms of the impact you can provide, and gets them to a solution in an easy process. Like your goal is to remove stress. You don't want to bring something that's so complicated and so difficult that they're like, fine, we'll just do it for ourselves. Because that's the other option. They can just do it for themselves, or they can just let that problem keep going. So you want to think about, how do you position yourself as the solution and put it together into a compelling offer? After we do that, we need to actually be good, right? And this is important. If you want to work with big companies, if you want to build these kind of partnerships, you actually have to be good and do what you say you can deliver, okay? Do what you say you can deliver. Here are some questions that I want you to be able to answer, right? Do you have social proof? Like, do you have testimonials? Do you have examples? Can someone say, yes, I work with that person? Secondly, what can you offer that other people can't do so easily? If everyone can do what you can do, then there's going to be a lot of competition, and it's going to be challenging for you to really stand out. Third, where do you already have the results, or you already have that reputation? If you've been working in this field in your corporate job, or through your consulting, or by helping people in your community, that's your reputation. Those are your results. And you can absolutely use those activities to have an impact or create corporate partnerships. And then lastly, what do you feel comfortable being held accountable for? Because if you're asking somebody for a big contract, they're going to expect you to deliver. So where do you feel comfortable actually coming through and doing what you said you can do? If you cannot prove those things, right? If I just went through those questions and you're like, I'm not really sure I have any of these, or I'm not really sure what I can say, that's absolutely okay. What you want to do is continue building your skills. Now you have a goal that you're trying to reach, so you can be more strategic about how you build that skill set. Secondly, work with smaller companies. Yes, we have the big brands on top. Yes, we want to build with these big high-profile companies, but there's nothing wrong with building your expertise with smaller companies and with your peers. Look to your left, look to your right, who's doing things that you're interested in, and start there. And then lastly, review your previous projects, review your previous clients, review your previous work reviews, and look for areas of feedback so that you know exactly the key areas that you want to improve upon. Brand credibility is so important, right? People want to work with people they can trust. And I know for sure I don't give money to random strangers. And I imagine that you don't do that either, especially if your job is on the line. Because remember our Paystack example, there's somebody in that company who's going to vouch for you, who's going to say, yes, I've done the research and I trust this person is going to deliver impact for our company. They don't want to risk it. They don't want to risk it on you. So you have to do things that, as I described, de-risk yourself. Make yourself less risky and make it easier for the person to say yes. You do that by building your reputation. Here are some reputation assets that can be helpful for you. A clean and professional website for your business, your organization, for yourself. Go and buy your domain name. It can be quite affordable on a yearly basis, but it's good for you to have your own professional home that's not on social media. One core platform, blog or email list where you're publishing at least once or twice a month. A case study where you have been successful in driving business impact, right? Having an impact that's measurable, that helps somebody improve. a testimonial from a previous client or an audience member, or a published media article. When people are searching, and people do this, they're like, someone to help me do this, or they'll ask their network, right? I'm in so many WhatsApp groups, and somebody will say, oh, does somebody know anybody that does this? Does anybody know someone that does this? You want to be top of mind for those referrals. And by having your reputation assets together, that can really help you. Here's an example of case studies that I've used. On one side, you'll see like an influencer marketing type of case study, where I'm giving a brief about what I did. I'm having the key highlight numbers, and I'm showing pictures and links to my impact. On the other side, I have one from public speaking. I'm here talking to you all today. I do a fair amount of public speaking. So if I wanted someone to book me, I'd be like, here's an example of what I've done before. Here's the brief. Here are 2 testimonials from the people that booked me, and here's some pictures. You want people to see that you've done this before and that you can do it again. I want you to know this. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be an influencer. You don't have to be high profile. You don't have to have millions and millions of followers. You don't need to be a celebrity, but you do need to be visible in your industry. The people that are making decisions should know who you are and should know how you can solve their problems. You know, once we build our reputation, we want to now build our relationships. And the people that you want to book you, they're going to rely on your reputation, and they should know you. I want to give you an example. So I had a chance to work with Visa, and this contract came from Jessica. She used to be the head of global innovation marketing and sponsorship at Visa, and I met her in a networking group. I joined a group for other people in advertising, marketing, and sponsorship, and I was proactive about reaching out to people and setting up Zoom chats. Right? This is the middle of the pandemic, so everyone was inside, and I set up 20-minute, hey, I want to just get to know you, and I followed up. And because I had a chance to talk to her, and I wasn't pitching her, I wasn't trying to sell her, I just was getting to know her in that kind of personal way. She said, wow, we absolutely could use you. Here's a partnership opportunity. I said, wow. What a blessing. But I had to be in the spaces. I had to be in the spaces where people like that are operating. So what could that look like for you? Now, I'm an introvert. I know some people don't believe that, but I'm an introvert. So I created some introvert-friendly ways to build relationships, as well as some extrovert-friendly ways to build some relationships. So if you're an introvert, digital events and workshops are low risk. They're easy. You can just be behind your keyboard talking to people. Joining LinkedIn groups, they're very powerful. People are talking about what they're doing. They're asking questions, and you can position yourself as an expert there. Volunteering with community organizations. I actually met my business partner volunteering somewhere. I was active. People could see that I was out there. And then lastly, submitting articles. That shares your expertise and lets people see that you know what you're talking about. If you're more of an extrovert and you want to be more out there, pitching yourself to speak at industry events and webinars, reaching out to schedule one-on-one calls with stakeholders, thought leaders, commenting and engaging on social media, having a conversation. Now, it's not time to fight. Like, I don't think you should be fighting on anybody's business page, but I think you can't articulate your thoughts and ideas. And when people see your name enough times, they're going to be like, okay, this is someone that I should be paying attention to. The next thing on your worksheet, what I want you to write down is, what are 3 specific ways, be specific, ways that you can increase your visibility in your industry and start to develop new relationships this month. December is a great time. Yes, people are turning down on work, but they're still open and being friendly to get to know new people. People are still brainstorming about what they want to do next year. So don't feel like December is over. You can't talk to anybody else. You don't have to do that. Pricing. I know everybody wants me to talk about pricing. What should I charge? What should I charge? I can't tell you your number. Honestly, sorry. If you came for that on this session, I apologize. You're not going to get it. And the reason I can't tell you that is that at the end of the day, it needs to reflect who you are, the value you bring, right? It's not about what you're worth, right? It's not about, oh, you know, pay me what I'm worth, that doesn't really work. You have to be able to justify and defend the price that you are charging people. And here are some tips that I can provide you with how to think about your pricing. First is your base cost. You need to know about what is the minimum you can even charge, right? What's the full cost? Think about your hours. And many of us, we forget the amount of hours that it takes. We're undervaluing our hours and like all the resources we're using. So you should have a base cost. The next thing you should think about is your profit margin, right? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? You have to put something on top of your base cost because that allows you to have more resources to invest, to grow, to learn, to improve. And then market rate. It can be hard to know what other people are charging. And sometimes clients can maybe use that to try and manipulate the situation a little bit to be like, oh, somebody else is charging me this. Well, that's their business. If they want to charge you that, who cares? But it can be helpful to know what other people are charging so that you can decide if you want to be more premium and make sure that your services match that, or if you want to be more mass market and affordable. Okay. So here's what I would do if I was starting from scratch. If I was like, I don't have anything, I'm starting from scratch. Research one company, because you just need one, really. Study their organization and how they work. Are you trying to work with their CSR team, their marketing team, their sales team, their tech team, their leadership team, their recruiting team? Study the organization. Third, brainstorm how your skills can be matched to their current work. Find the team, department, or the person who's responsible for this work area. Send a brief message on LinkedIn asking for 15 minutes to learn more about the industry and where there are opportunities for improvement, because that'll help you see if you're on the right track. You already should have some ideas about what you can do, but you need to get that confirmation that you're actually on the right path. So what should you be doing right now to get ready? Finalize what you actually want to offer. You're going to have a long list. You're going to have a lot of different ideas, but finalize on that one. Next, develop a target list of the 5 to 10 companies that you'd like to work with next year and create a plan to start developing those relationships. Are you joining LinkedIn groups? Are you attending events like this and networking in the chat? And then prepare your reputation assets and look for 1 to 2 ways to develop your profile in your industry. Here's a quick recap, because I know I covered a lot, and I want to leave time for questions. So if you have questions, drop them right now. I'm going to get to them. 1, be in the business of problem solving. It will change the way you view the world and you view opportunities. There are so many people who are out there like, oh, somebody should fix this. Somebody should do this. Somebody should make this better. As an entrepreneur and as somebody who wants to work with corporate clients, if you see a company not doing something right, if you see an opportunity for them to improve, that is an open market for you. That means there's room for you to make an impact. Secondly, take your time building your skills and building your reputation. You want to have people that can vouch for your skills. So if you're not there yet, that's absolutely okay. Keep working on it. You want to prepare yourself for pitching and making the sale. It takes time to practice having these conversations, talking about who you are and what you can do, and developing that. And lastly, every interaction is an opportunity to learn. If somebody says no, that's okay. That helps you get better. So don't be discouraged. Like, I actually believe that if I reach out to 10 people, only 1 person will reach back to me. It's okay. It takes time. Until you become like high profile and famous, people aren't going to have your time, but that's okay. Every single time you improve, you learn how to do it better, and you move forward. Now, in case you want more, if you want to get access to my framework, if you want to get access to the tools that I have or any of the templates that I have a pitch season bundle that covers strategy and pitching, and you can access that at afuaosei.com/pitch season bundle. If you follow me on Instagram, you can connect with me at Hello Afua. So if you don't follow me, you can connect with me at Hello Afua, and I'm excited to take your questions and keep the conversation going. Yes, 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 yes. Last plug, afuaosei.com/pitch season bundle. That is the hashtag. I mean, that is the website. So great. So I have some questions. I have some questions lined up. And if you have more questions, please do share them. Please do share them. So the first question is, how can you tell a potential great partner before sticking to a partnership deal, especially a deal that needs upfront financial commitment? That's fantastic. So the first thing that I want you to think about is the same way people are going to interview and evaluate you, you absolutely want to do the same thing. It's not enough to just get excited and be like, wow, oh my gosh, they want to work with me. Let me go for it. No. You want to also vet and evaluate them. So you want to review them. You want to have your own criteria in advance. So let me give you an example. And this is, let's say you're going to speak somewhere. Someone is like, okay, I want you to come and speak, do this presentation. you don't just say, yes, I'm excited. You want to ask them some questions. Where's the event? What time is the event? How long is it? What do you want me to talk about? Who is going to be in the audience? What does success look like? Like, you have to have your own questions already to evaluate if it's a good fit. So I want you to take that same approach when it comes to the partner. So think about what's important. Maybe you want to think about their previous track record. So you want to evaluate, how do they work with other partners? You also want to evaluate the team. Do they also have the skills and the expertise to be able to work with you on the team? You also want to see, is this a priority for them? Does it align with what they're trying to achieve? And go from there. So that's what I would recommend that you do, is to think about what's important to you and also evaluate them. The last thing that I'll say is it's okay to test people out. So even if you want to have a long-term major partnership with them down the line, I also would encourage you to think about, what does a short-term pilot look like? What does a 3-month pilot look like? For you to test and evaluate if you even like working with them. So you don't go all the way into a big project, but you do a short-term small project with them first. So I hope that answers your question. If that wasn't clear, drop another question so I can get into it a bit further. Next question. At what point do you tell a partner that enough is enough? That is, it is not working and you would rather change your terms of engagement? That's a fantastic question. So what I'd recommend is, one, you need to have a contract. And you need to have in that contract what your terms of engagement are. You don't want to ever enter into a partnership without being clear on what the KPIs are and what success looks like. I think that's an area where a lot of people get messed up. There's no clarity about how we're going to measure this. So at the end, someone can be like, oh, it didn't work, or I didn't like this, et cetera, et cetera. I think what you also need to do is communicate how people can work with you. Like, are you going to have one check-in meeting every week, and then they'll get a report, and then they'll get access to this? Take your time to really think through the entire process. And that'll help you beforehand to kind of like prevent, hopefully, some issues. Now, let's say you run into some issues. In your contract, there needs to be the clause that allows you to change the agreement. That needs to exist there. If it doesn't, then you'll need to speak to legal counsel to help you out with that. Beyond that, I think you want to have a conversation with the client to say, and it shouldn't just be something that comes out of the blue. Have a conversation with them and come with solutions. So it's not enough to say, oh, I don't like this. Oh, this isn't working. Come with a recommendation and say, right now, the way that we're working isn't the most efficient way or the most efficient strategy for our team. So I want to make some recommendations on other ways that we can work together to make improvements. But come with that recommendation. But the best thing that you can do is make sure that you are prepared in advance and that you get ready beforehand, that you are actually organized and you're thinking about these things beforehand. Okay. Yes. So do we have any other questions? I can take one more question. I also want to drop the link for the Pit Season Bundle. So if you're interested in more trainings, if you're interested in learning more about this, I will share the link as well. And I will ask the moderators to share this as well so that everyone can access this. One thing that I do want to share with people, sorry, friends. One thing that I do want to see more people doing is that a lot of people think that you have to be a big, famous company. You have to have all this kind of stuff to work with corporate clients. And I absolutely disagree with you on that. Start with smaller companies first to build out your structure, to think if you even like working with these people. It also will give you the chance to test out how you like to engage with people, how your own team model works. And then that will keep you from having to go through a lot of stress when you work with bigger clients, right? Like when you practice upfront with smaller companies, it'll help you do that. Some of the areas that I know are major opportunities, that are like major opportunities, are one, talent management and recruiting. This is so important. People are struggling with finding good people for their companies. They're also struggling with recruiting those people. They're struggling with training those people. They're struggling with keeping them engaged. And so if you are in the career and people management space, I think that's really important. A lot of people also are interested in financial services. So if you have skills that align with that, that's also another great opportunity. If you are also active in the marketing digital strategy perspective, that's a great opportunity. So there are a lot of fields that are growing. All it requires you is to think about, how can I solve a problem for a company in this area? How can I step up? How can I create a process and an offer that solves a problem? And how can I position it to them? I think that's absolutely okay. There's so much opportunity for you there. And I'm excited for you all to go out and get it. So if there's no more questions, I'm gonna give you all like 1 more minute to submit questions. If not, please do connect with me and engage with me on social media. My Instagram handle is @helloafua, and I'm gonna share that in the chat as well. And if you'd like to connect with me, if you're interested more in corporate clients, brand partnerships, please do connect with me there. And I'm excited to see all of you all like figure out how this could work for you, for your business, and for the area that you're interested in. Okay? No more questions? No more questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much to the Reach team. And thank you so much for the opportunity to come and connect with you all. And I'm excited for you all to have some really incredible success and move forward in your business and your careers. Take care, everyone. See you and goodbye. Just gonna sit here smiling. Or I'll just check my Instagram and see if you all have followed me there. All right, see if you all have followed me there. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. I think I was muted. Hi.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
perfect. Hi. I can, yes. Hi.
How are you doing?
Very well. How are you? I see it might be from my side, but I can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just asking, the chat, is it a private chat or is it a public chat?
It's a private one, I believe.
It's a private one. Okay. I wasn't too sure whether folks that we were speaking to could see the chat.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm not sure if anyone else has joined the conversation. Ezra, it would be great if you could give us an indication as to whether we should start or not. Okay, we can begin now. Great, CJ. I don't know how you want to do this. Did you want to introduce yourself? I'm happy to follow as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. I'm happy to introduce myself, and then you can go next. So my name is Chukwujeku Onyeko, preferred name CJ, so you don't bite your tongue. I've been an investment banker for 10 years. I work with Rand Merchant Bank currently. And, I'm excited and looking forward to share insights into banking investments. And I've known JL for over 20 years. Couldn't really say no to his art. So looking forward to speaking.
Great. So yeah, sure. I can go next. So my name is Zanele Hladjoayo. I currently work for the International Finance Corporation, which is part of the World Bank Group. I work as an investment officer in IFC's infrastructure investment team. I'm based in Nairobi. I started feels like a lifetime ago now, but I started my career with Goldman Sachs in London. I then went on a very interesting adventure career-wise, where I worked with a boutique corporate finance house. I was with PwC's corporate finance team as well. I also spent some time in Washington, D.C. with the World Bank before joining the IFC. So my career really has spanned, almost 14 years, and mostly across corporate finance, investment banking, and now development finance.
Great. Thanks, Anile. I think let's get right to it so that we can actually leave a bit of time for questions. As you all know, it's a banking, finance, and investments summit, and I think we just wanted to walk, the guys listening on the call through a couple, key themes, right? And we'll segment them into, 4 sections, right? One, getting into the space, how you can position yourself post you getting to get that first promotion, and then how you transition into mid-level management. And then obviously, if you have the stamina and you're enjoying what you're doing, going to, executive and C-suite. So maybe I'll go first, Zanele, just, a few tips around getting into banking and finance generally. I think, as Zanele said, it cuts across, whether corporate finance, whether debt, whether development, or even, at some point, you can actually classify, from capital markets to project finance as broadly speaking finance. I think, from my own perspective, I think a few things that, are really important whilst you're starting your career, maybe as an analyst or an intern, is one, to be very curious, right? Intellectually curious. You need to, very early on figure out what you don't know, and figure out how you can navigate that to actually find answers. People, want to know that, you're vulnerable, but they also want to know that, you're willing to spend the time to look for answers. It's not a lot of hand holding. So it's sink or swim typically in finance and investment banking. So you need to, actually show initiative very, very on when you get in, especially, you're in a pool of analysts and there's huge competition. Personally, I think, what, people, don't talk about, a lot is, the fact that, we all say it's very competitive. There's actually, some room for failure, right? But, from my perspective, my advice to folks is that you need to be able to fail fast and fail early, right? So if you have questions, you ask early. You don't wait till the last day or when a presentation is due or when the MD asks for it to start giving excuses, right? You ask a lot of questions and, you show your vulnerability. And even if you fail, you're failing early, and then you're actually creating, low stake islands, right? Where you can actually fail and not necessarily waiting for D-Day or a very high stakes situation to show your inefficiencies. So Zanele, I don't know if you had any thoughts on, first 2-3 years of getting into investment banking or finance, broadly speaking.
I would 100% agree with what you've identified, particularly in terms of that sort of genuine interest and sort of curiosity about the field. I think that is not something you can sort of pretend or sort of outsmart your way into. I think you need to show that curiosity, but not only just having it, but also demonstrating it. So I know, for instance, with IFC, and I've taken part in a couple of recruitments, not necessarily graduate recruitments, but at analyst level and above. And a lot of the questions we always ask, apart from the technical questions, which I assumed once you get to interview level, you've pretty much aced, is just trying to sort of make an assessment around how curious is this person, how committed is this person to not only our mandate as an institution, but also in terms of, what we're trying to deliver. And so some of the questions we'll ask, for instance, are around, we appreciate that you may not have sort of domain expertise in X field, but can you tell us a little bit about the transactions that have caught your attention in this particular field in the last year, for instance? Tell us why that transaction was interesting. Tell us why you think it's a landmark transaction. Tell us what you think the implications of this transaction are in the sector. And so those are a lot of the questions we would try to ask just to understand and sort of suss out the true level of commitment from the candidate in joining the organization. And I think it applies across the board, not just to IFC. I mean, even in sort of hardcore investment banking, when I was interviewing, there were a lot of questions just around what is your understanding of this field? What is your understanding of the fundamentals of corporate finance? What is your understanding of project finance? And so I think it's really important as you try to sort of craft out that career to also make sure that, you show and you can demonstrate that you have an interest. The other thing I would echo, CJ, is sort of on the technical side. So certainly from the IFC side, and I don't know if this number is correct, certainly it was a number shared with me a couple of months ago, but from IFC's perspective, I know we get about 5,000 to 6,000 applications for every post, for every job advertised. And so what that means as well is that once you are lucky enough and also able enough to then secure an interview, go through the interview cycle, be successful, get an offer letter, you're then in a very competitive pool of very well qualified people. And so really your technical skill set really needs to stand out at that point, because otherwise really, you're surrounded by 80 other very smart graduates who are also trying to achieve the same objectives as you are. So I would say really it has to be a commitment, a lifetime commitment even to sort of upskilling, right? So from free training, from training that's available within the institution as well. But I think it is important just to show and distinguish yourself as someone who's technically competent, but also exceptional in terms of what you're able to deliver. Let me stop there.
Thanks, Zanele. Yeah, I think that technical competence it's very important, right? It gets you in the room and it keeps you in the room, right? But I think, from, getting in the room, acing the interview, getting the offer letter, I do think, in order to actually get that next promotion, and perhaps let's move forward to the next point we wanted to discuss was, yes, technicality, very smart people. But now, you need to be able to make an impression, across your peers and also your superiors, right? That it's not just about, you actually, walk the talk, right? What's actually important at that stage is to show that you're a self-starter, you can actually take ownership and take initiative of tasks, and you're not someone that has to be handheld at every point in time. I do appreciate, I did mention, the fact that, you should ask questions, but at some point in time, when you're in the room, people expect you to know this, right? You can't ask, those, I actually never like to say stupid questions, but when, questions are asked over and over and over again, they tend to be stupid, right? Using the word loosely. So, when you get into the room, the technical is a tick, you've had the offer, you're a staff. I think what's most important now is, to start stuff, be a starter, take initiative, ask questions as to how you can make, processes faster, how you can do things smarter, how you can take off workload from your superiors, right? Be prepared, be factual, be knowledgeable, right? When you're in the room, when you're in the meeting, be well read, right? Bring something to the room and be confident to express your ideas, right? And I think, people would see it, right? Amongst your peers, amongst your superiors, they would see, despite, in addition to your technical capabilities, they would figure out that, okay, this one is willing to learn, it's teachable, and actually solicits feedback, right, on your performance. Because, if you don't solicit feedback, you don't know how well you're doing or how bad you're doing, right? But I think it's not just about soliciting feedback, it's about soliciting feedback and course correcting, right? Because, you can solicit feedback, and get defensive, right? But, the mindset should be one, around soliciting feedback to course correct and actually, get better at what you do, right? Because at the end of the day, you have stakeholders, you have internal stakeholders, you have clients, right? The first promotion, you might not be interacting with clients as much, per se. Your stakeholders are more internal, but, you have interface with, some external stakeholders, and the trust needs to come through, right? Before your superiors actually, let you engage with clients, they need to be comfortable that despite not being in the room, you can hold your own, right? And there's no better way to show that confidence than soliciting feedback, taking ownership of tasks, taking initiative, and showing that, whilst you're in the office or among your peers, and then people are willing to let you do more and give you more responsibility. Zanella, I'm sure you have some additional thoughts to add to that.
Absolutely. And again, I would agree with the first point made just around your ability to demonstrate value. And I think particularly in these sort of fast moving environments, which is banking, corporate finance, I would even throw in management consulting as well. There's an expectation that the value you're bringing to the table is one, technical value, but also you're bringing an ability to offload responsibility from the people you're working with. And also the nature, and maybe I can say something a little bit about staffing, having been both on the Goldman side and now at IFC. Typically, staffing is very lean. So I know sometimes in some organizations, you'll work on a deal or you'll have a project and, there are 5 levels of professionals and you're all working together and you have a deal team of 6 people and, you have a couple of months to get to know each other and get to know the culture and sort of figure out how you'll implement. Typically in banking, that's not how it works. I mean, you're working typically on, 2 or 3 deals at the same time. And it's also a very lean structure. So you may work with, they have different names for different institutions, but if you think of someone below a partner, and then you'd have an analyst and maybe someone in between if you're lucky. So it's a very lean environment, and it's a very fast-moving environment. And so that, I think, to your point, CJ, just around your ability to show value technically, but also just to help the people you're working with, is critical. And I think typically, I know banking is known as being very hardcore, and I think for many years you were as good as your last deal. I think there's still a little bit of that sentiment as well, that you're generally as good as your last deal. And that doesn't stop just at the director, it also starts at the analyst, because there will be a review of the work done. And yes, you may have ticked all the boxes in terms of delivery, but if the general impression from your vice president, from your director, whoever it is you're working with, is that really you're just not quite fitting into the team, you'll find it hard to move forward. So I think that ability to be agile and just to show value continuously and sort of delivery is really important. The other thing I wouldn't discount, because again, it's an environment, and I feel like maybe in many ways I'm contradicting myself. I'm not doing it intentionally, but I think two things can be true at the same time. So yes, it is a very fast-paced environment for the most part. It is quite cutthroat. But I also think we shouldn't discount the importance of actually being a pleasant person to work with. And it may sound like a bit of a nebulous point, CJ, but I think it's really important, and particularly in an environment where there's a lot of emphasis on empathetic leadership and being able to work productively in a space. And I think with banking, sometimes its reputation sort of carries the reality. And I think, yes, whilst there is an expectation that you'll be fast and technical, I think you also need to be a pleasant person and an all-rounder, and not just in terms of that one deal, but just generally how you're seen in the workplace. And so I wouldn't sort of discount the importance of sort of introspection and just making sure that you yourself, in addition to being sort of a technical whiz kid, you're also, just in terms of your interpersonal skills, able to bring out your best in an environment, because it shows, and it won't just show in sort of the 360 feedback, but also your ability to be promoted. I think there's certain skill sets that you'll need to demonstrate to get to your next level. And that really does cut across not just the technical competency, but also your ability to relate with your colleagues.
Yes, I think I absolutely agree with that last point, right? Sometimes, because of the perception, folks just think, you can just be focused on technical and getting the work done without actually spending time to build, a good rapport and network with people you work with. It's important that people who you work with enjoy working with you, right? On one end, they know that you deliver, but on the other end, they know that you don't take yourself too seriously, right? It's important. And it's what do we sell from banking to finance? It's not concrete. It's intangible, right? So people, want you to demonstrate value, but they want to work with a nice guy, right? They want to work with a nice lady. If you make work painful for people, despite being able to deliver, people would avoid and rather work with another technical. Remember, there are several people, right? So there will be a great technical guy, a good client guy, and a nice guy or a nice lady. And, that person might not be that technical, but is nicer and good with clients, and it will get staffed on those roles, right? So it's important that, you're not, you don't take yourself too seriously, but you take the work you do very seriously, and you take your clients very seriously. Right? It's okay to have a laugh. It's okay, as you say, you need to be empathetic and personable to actually succeed. And I think we've kind of, moved into what actually, takes you from your first promotion to being, a manager, right? You obviously need to build relationship and trust of your colleagues and clients, right? Clients give you business because, they're looking at several pitch books, right? And it's perhaps, if you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, most of those pitch books would be between, I'll say, 6 and a 9, right? And, some clients will say, oh, I've enjoyed working with this person. I've known this person. He understands me. He understands my style. And that's where relationship comes through. Same thing, you're working with a partner, you're a mid-level senior associate or a junior VP, or you're even a director level. But, you've had a pleasant working relationship with a partner or with an MD in the firm, right? And, they've, pretty much known that, for you to be where you are, you've actually demonstrated a fair bit of, technical capabilities and also client engagement, right? But them just actually knowing you and being able to interact with you is actually what will put you in good stead when your name is being discussed in rooms that you're not there, right? I think sometimes people get focused on, I'll let my work speak for myself. But I kind of advise against that, right? Knowing what I don't know now, right? Sometimes you need to, talk about your jobs, talk about what you did over the weekend, be comfortable to say, I actually didn't work this weekend, right? This is what I did. I played, football. I saw my nieces. I did this, right? It's important, right? But, I'm not telling you to, go a wall for 4 days and come back and say, you went to Miami to play golf, right? You have to make sure that you've done the job, but have a life, right? Because people can relate to the softer side of people. You never know what interests, you share. And then that gets picked up. But, my advice is, obviously the first 1, 2, 3 years, get knee deep in knowing what you were employed for, first of all, as a first year, second year analyst. I wouldn't advise you trying to network or chit chat with a partner or an MD. Just put your head down and get the job done. But, as you get more senior, you're giving more responsibilities, you're in charge of relationships. It's very, very important that you build a rapport with senior management. You might need to get a mentor, you might need to get a sponsor, but people like to sponsor or mentor people that they can also learn from, right? What I've found is, it's two ways, right? Sometimes we're looking for mentors or sponsors to grab, right? But, it can be lonely high up there, right? And people are also looking for, people below them that they can also, get insights from, right? You might be a millennial, the guy is in his 50s, not a millennial, but he wants to understand how millennials think to actually improve himself. So, I think that relationship and, bilateral feedback, and you can never underestimate the value of having a mentor, a sponsor that is vested in you, but knows that, despite, or if he was not vested in you, you were going to succeed nonetheless, right? Because at the end of the day, the person wants to be involved in your success. And if you give them a reason to see that you're getting there and they can just do little to help you out there, you'll be a good candidate if, there was a large pool of mentees for them to choose from. Perhaps you can, top and tail. I think it was a mouthful, but, maybe.
No. And I think, look, I keep saying it, but 100% agree with all the points made. I love the point about mentorship. I think that's really important, both formal mentorship, and I would encourage people to lean into the mentorship programs that are available. I mean, I think a lot of corporates in these days offer, I know certainly IFC has sort of a formal mentorship program. And to the extent that you're able to plug in and just make sure what you're trying to get out also makes sense for the person you're asking to get in, to get advice from. But also informal mentorship. And this is a space that I think, even as Africans, and it kind of ties into the second point I wanted to make, but even as Africans, I think we sometimes don't lean in, and not to speak generically, I mean, but my impression is that we don't, and I speak to myself as well, we are not maybe awake to the power of informal networks as well. And I think LinkedIn has really opened up a world where you can see a profile that is inspirational and you can hit the person up. And for the most part, there are two outcomes there that you're faced with. I mean, the first is that you won't get a response, and that's fine. But actually, the upside is that the person could respond, and what you then do with that instant connection is up to you. But I think where we could really start leaning in on is, number one, identifying, people who are in the industry that you think are inspiring and that you think you would benefit from engaging. And then the second piece is, what do I do with this? So this person has accepted me on LinkedIn. How do I move in? And I think that's the piece that I think we could all maybe just do a bit better. We really literally have a platform of millions that we can plug into. And I think it's now a question of, let's hit up the people. And I myself do that, frankly. And the second point I wanted to make, and it's sort of related to the first point, CJ, is just around the idea of self-promotion, which doesn't always sit easy. But coming back to the question of how do I move up the ranks, right? And yes, there is a point where you really do need to keep your head low and just focus on execution, and hopefully your work will speak for itself. But eventually, once you're in a pool of people doing exactly the same thing, there is an element of actually self-promotion that will be needed. And I spent a couple of years in the States. A lot, as I mentioned, my career sort of spanned various continents. And so I spent, some time in the UK and then some time in the States. And one thing I absolutely love, and I know this is a controversial opinion because not everyone agrees with it, but one thing I'm in awe of in terms of American culture is just the ability and sort of the comfort with self-promotion. So to say, hi, my name is Zanele, I've done XYZ, and this is absolutely why I think I'm deserving of this. And in a non-apologetic way, in a way that's not sort of conditional on like, yes, I'm good, but I also understand if you don't think I'm good. It's just sort of an unwavering confidence and ability to show that I belong here. And not only do I belong here, but I am of the opinion that I belong at the next level. And so this is something I find so fascinating, and I could read books and books and books about this because I think it's so important really for us to just really have a higher level of comfort around self-promotion. And I think especially as young African professionals, there isn't enough of that going on. And I think there are a whole lot of drivers for that, CJ. I mean, that's a conversation for another day maybe. But I would encourage everyone just to not shy away from being very clear in the workplace what your expectations are. And if you need to take it to the director, take it to the director. Obviously, there's a nuanced way of doing this, right? So no one wants to be addressed with a laundry list of this is what I want, and this is why I won't accept anything less than that. I mean, that's never going to work for anyone in any professional setting. But I think just that clarity of mind for yourself, but also communicating that with your seniors that, look, guys, I've been at this level for 4 years. I think I've done a really good job. Look at my 360, it supports this. My execution supports this. And this is why I think you should be considering me for the next level. I think that conversation is something we can all do better at.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, right? I think, maybe just to add another phrase, when you say, this is me, and I actually feel that I'm the best person for the role. I think what the Americans, as you rightly said, do well is, add on another layer to say you'll be making a big mistake if you don't consider me for the role, right? And that's not being arrogant, right? That's being, comfortable in your own skin and knowing, I'll do a good job. From a technical perspective, quantitative, qualitative, I tick the box, right? Because there hasn't been red flags. So it's either you've been lying to me in my appraisals and haven't been a fair, it hasn't been a fair 360 process, or this is my time, right? And then people think about it, right? The worst that can happen, you wouldn't hear no, but you've sent a signal to management to say, guys, this is my time. And even if you don't get a yes, I bet in another year you'll get a yes, right? Because they're going to have conversations to say, do we want to lose this person to the competitor? But what I would always caution is it has to tie up, right? Your 360s and reviews can be, negative, and, you're asking for the next role, right? It just shows lack of self-awareness, right? People that are confident, like Zanele has said, they are also very self-aware, right? So I think taking that self-awareness and then layering it with some humility and confidence, not arrogance, but humility and confidence, is actually important, right? And it's actually, I think that is the trait that will, stand you out to not just being, getting into the room or getting the first promotion, but, get you to senior management and executive management, in my view. I think, perhaps, Zanele, do you want us to take some questions? Because I think, that's the big, point around, going from mid to senior management to C-suites. But perhaps if we take a few questions before we talk to that point.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so So Victoria says, still on the topic of becoming a manager, once you have become a manager, what's the difference between a manager and a good individual contributor? Yeah, so I'll say two things to that, right? And then I'll let Zanella give her views, right? So I think for me, best managers that I've actually reported to are managers that I looked up to and I knew in my head that they could do the job. They could probably do the job better than I could, faster than I could, but they were happy to delegate to me, despite it taking longer for me to go through the process of getting the job done. So I think the difference between, a good manager and a good individual contributor is, a good manager knows that they can actually contribute and get the job done, but they are able to delegate to folks below them to also go through that process and actually help them become better versions of themselves, right? And I think also another point is, being able to, listen and inspire others, right? Because you can be a good individual contributor, you work alone, right? But you don't work as a team, or you take the glory for yourself to yourself. I, right? It can be I. There's Google that we all had. There's Investopedia. There's a lot of stuff that folks 20 years ago, 25 years ago probably didn't have. So you're starting off a good base, but it's the attitude and your technical capabilities that gets you there as a good manager. But I think the difference between a good manager and an individual contributor is being able to have a team perspective and actually delegate to get the best work through others. Zanella, thoughts?
I agree. And I think what you're speaking to ultimately is just that ability to, if you sort of think, my experience across institutions has been similar to yours, CJ, in that what's been an excellent manager, it's someone who technically I know I have the support of, right? And in many ways, both in sort of on the empathetic side. So yes, they are a manager, but they also understand what it means to get a request in at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. And, they, in as much as that sort of objective has to be met, there is that element of saying, look, guys, I understand what this means, but let's outline what needs to happen over the next couple of hours for us to deliver. So it's very much a collaborative effort. And I know it's nuanced and it almost sounds basic, but we've all been there, right? We've all been through someone who is the most senior in your team, but you feel a very big disconnect with this person, both in terms of how are we delivering what we need to deliver, but also technically. And so I think a good manager is able to lean in technically and say, okay, guys, so you take the first cut of this DCF, this valuation model that needs to be done. I'll have a look at it in a couple of hours and let's iterate, right? And maybe that level of micromanagement is not needed. It really depends on what's needed. But I think just that ability to demonstrate that we're working together in this. I am, of course, at the most senior level, so there probably isn't a reason for me to really lean in, but you can count on me. So I think that would make it really important for us to highlight as being sort of what I personally would require from a manager. In terms of a good contributor, I think it's exactly that. It's sort of, we're a team. I'll do the final review, but we're still ultimately a team. And I agree with you, CJ, and everything you've said. I think it just makes so much sense for managers to be trained in this, right? And I think particularly in banking, and certainly in development finance, I can tell you that the higher up you go, the more paperwork there is. So it feels like you're managing systems and you're managing bureaucracy. And so it's very easy to then start becoming disconnected from people who are actually delivering. And so that ability to still sort of be able to relate with staff who are on the execution side and still understand what that means when that request comes in at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. But still then able to also manage upwards and say to that manager that, look, this is where my team is. This is probably what we can deliver within a realistic time frame, but this is probably what we're not going to be able to do. If you're able as a manager to sort of cover those touch points, I think that's probably what makes the key difference.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, I absolutely agree, right? And I think, perhaps being a good individual technical contributor will put you in good stead to being a good manager, right? Because You know, if a manager knows that it takes, for example, 5 hours to do a DCF, right? When a client asks for a DCF in 30 minutes, right? The manager is able to manage, right? Because he knows that it's not just going to happen, and he's going to manage and probably ask for 2 hours and 3 hours and then get his hands dirty, right? But if the manager actually doesn't know what needs to be done and just got to that spot, by some stroke of luck, then there's that disconnect, right? Because the subordinates, feel not taken care of, right? Because he's clueless. She's clueless. She actually doesn't know what needs to be done. But if at the back of your head, as a subordinate, you know that your manager has got your back, right? At the end of the day, you know that if you put in your best, you guys are in this together to deliver targets, and then there are priorities that are set and are not constantly changing. Except the client is always right? Sometimes you know how your day is going. Sometimes you come in and your day changes. And I think that dynamism needs to be there. But I think, the best managers are managers that actually have done it or are able to do it through others while showing some empathy. I do think, and I also totally agree with you to say with the higher up you go, it can get lonely, right? Because you're doing admin, right? And for someone that is, very technical or likes the deal flow, you always want to be snooping around to say, hey, what's happening here, right? What's the deal? What's the client, right? Because managing people is also tough, right? You're dealt with HR issues, you're dealt with paperwork, board papers, all of that stuff. Some people are born to do it. Some people are not just for that, right? So, but, if you want to go up, at some stage, some people are born leaders and managers. Some people are forced into being managers because higher management, the guys higher up need them to come up, right? Because at the end of the day, this is what we call making sure that your succession planning is sorted, right? If you leave an organization and you don't train people, even if they are deal makers and they want to stay as deal makers, if you've seen, some traits in them that you feel you can help them hone to be better managers, you have to do it, right? So I think, there's, some managers want to keep doing deals, but at some point in time, those managers are, forcefully asked to, pay less attention to the deals and actually start managing and leading and being more strategic.
And sorry, one last thing to add on this. I saw it less at GS at Goldman, but then again, this was many, many years ago. But certainly I can tell you at IFC, the culture, my observation is that the culture is evolving more to put emphasis on the efficacy and the importance of good leadership. And so even us, for instance, and I'm not sort of at C-suite, but fairly senior within the institution. And even at our level, I mean, we've just gone through an intensive leadership training with specific to my team with INSEAD. And I have no doubt that in terms of resources cost the institution a lot, but I think there's a lot of emphasis now on self-awareness and the importance of creating a conducive environment. Right. And I think gone are the days in the 80s and 90s where you could just be a terrible manager within banking and you got away with it as long as you delivered and everyone got a big fat bonus at the end of the year. I think now really that culture of actually, are you a good manager? Is the team gelling? Do you understand the morale? Is it high? Is it low? Is it where it should be? Those kind of touch points, I think there's a lot more emphasis. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing in R&B and maybe it may be a development finance sort of angle, but I'm encouraged to see the level of sort of awareness of leadership and what a good manager is and what a bad manager is, and it's not just a question of bottom line.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. I think for me at R&B at Rand Merchant Bank, I think our culture is it's kind of different to the typical bulge bracket investment banks that you see in America or in London, right? So, we, were structured, it started over 40 years ago. It's sort of a boutique, and then over several M&A transactions over the years. We're now the largest, African bank by market capitalization. But I think what RMB's culture is more, an owner-manager culture, right? You're told to, and you're remunerated on seeing the business, owning the business like your own. So each deal maker kind of sees the business as CJ Incorporated, as a subsidiary of RMB, right? That way, there's shared values. The organization tries to pride people to be able to bring their discretionary energy into the business, instead of taking those ideas and go setting up their businesses outside, right? So there are lots. It's an entrepreneurial culture. It's non-hierarchical, but obviously with the new modern day investment banking, people want titles. People are benchmarking with the bulge bracket. So because we've become a bigger organization, the titles and clear set, you're reporting to this person has to happen, right? Because at the end of the day, that's the way the world sees progression. But there's a considerable amount of funds that have gone into training, both internal and external, around self-awareness, around figuring how best to actually manage people and lead people, to make sure that you're able to get the best out of them and you're able to get the best out of best results for the organization, right? So it's there, now more than when I joined, and I see it as a process, right? Organizations are spending a lot on their people to make sure that their people are retrained, their people are in touch with what's happening in the outside world, and I'm not just focused on deal making, right? Because if you're a deal maker, you're just focused on the detail, but you need to be self-aware as to what's happening in the environment, what's happening in your societies, and just doing good business and not just P&L and revenue. Are there any other questions? Or Zanella, do you want to take I think mid-level to executive, right? So I'm also not in C-suite yet, but I can talk to what that's the next level, right? Now being a senior manager and trying to translate into C-suite, perhaps I'll talk to 2 or 3 points that I think is important, right? Given what I do now and what I've also interacted with, my mentors and sponsors. And I'll say quickly, I think at this level, you already have demonstrated, a certain level of technical abilities, and, people understand your personality, right? So you built relationships and you've gained trust of your colleagues. How do you take that to another level? I think there are 3 things. For me, you need to pick your battles, right? You can't be everything to everybody. You can't inspire everybody. I think there are very few people that there are people that are inspirational leaders, right? That are everything to everybody, or everybody can tap into, right? But I guess those are the folks that write books, right? And all. But you have to pick your battles. Sometimes you need to let someone win, as far as it's not, fundamentally different from your core values. So you need to know your core values and then pick your battles, right? If it's something that doesn't go against your core values, but it means a lot to the other party, you can let it be, right? Because that way you build additional trust with that person, and that person will bat for you, right? When you want to go into C-suite. I think you need to be able to say no, right? What I see a lot is, people take on a lot, right? And they feel that, it's actually a great thing to always say yes, right? But from my perspective, there's the gift of saying no. Like, saying no is a gift, right? Because 1, people have actually identified that you're the go-to person that can actually deliver value in this particular task, and they've come to you, right? But because they put the trust and they've identified you as that person, doesn't mean that you have more than 24 hours in the day to deliver according to the standards that you've been known to deliver on, right? So being able to say no is actually a gift. You need to prioritize, take care of yourself, take care of your team, and say no when you know that you cannot actually deliver to the standards you hold yourself, and then you also know your priorities, right? You're not going to say no to a big pitch, right? If you think you're the right person to fly up to, say, Abuja to make a pitch to the president or the vice president around, financing or Nigeria's budget and how you can make sure that Nigeria's debt capacity is better, right? But you can say no to something else that you feel, okay, I'm not the right person for this, or I don't just have the time for it, right? So I think there's a gift of saying no. We all have finite amount of time, and then we want to do a lot with our time. You need to be able to prioritize. I've seen that in several C-suite executives, because everyone wants to get into your calendar, but you need to prioritize. I think one last thing I'll point to is just a few words and the way you interact, right? And one that has actually resonated with me is, saying yet, saying, I haven't got to it yet. Just adding that yet, not just saying I haven't got to it, I'll get to it when I get to it, right? So the way you actually interact with people will be able to see that this guy actually gets it. He sees the big picture, he's thinking strategically, and he knows the importance of the acts, right? So whether you say no or you say I haven't got to it, by including yet, you're also saying I would get to it because I know it's important, right? So those are just things that I constantly think about, right? Because being in banking for 10 years now, you want to get to C-suite, and just interacting and watching people in C-suite and how they interact, and the kind of words and they use. I think those are key things I've seen, and I'm deliberate and intentional in imbibing them. Zanele?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. I mean, similar to you, can't speak to sort of current experiences in C-suite, but definitely I think we're aligned, CJ, in terms of our observations. Mine have been both in terms of the institutions, in terms of having relationships with those in the C-suite, both in my organization now, but even the person who was my director at Goldman now is actually very senior in that institution as well. And sort of being able to see how he acts and sort of how his trajectories look like professionally has been very interesting for me. And I have similar observations. Also, my husband, he's no longer it, but at some point he was a chief of staff for one of the largest banks in the region I'm in now. And so he interacted a lot with the group CEO of large banking institutions. And his observations are also interestingly aligned with mine, which is, number one, definitely the ability to demonstrate and deliver on value. And we all know this. It's probably actually a bit of a nebulous point to make, but really you're as good as your deal book, right? At that level, and particularly in banking, it's sort of the deals that you've worked on, what you've brought to the bank, what you've brought to the institution, but what also your ability to bring in more business. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is. And so I think the big emphasis would be that, just the ability, being able to promise and deliver on the deal flow, but also the quality of the network itself. And we know that's very important, right? Just the quality and the depth of the network, and that kind of speaks to the ability to bring in the big deals, which is ultimately within a banking institution what's most important. So I agree with that. The second one, where I think is also important, is sort of the ability to rally and converge people on critical points, right? Because that's really what distinguishes you from every other at that level, certainly in terms of the ability to crowd in opinions, decisions, and then move things forward strategically to where they need to be. And I think very few people have that. And I certainly in IFC, there's one person I've identified who I personally am in awe of, because as I watch this person in motion, I'm just floored by the person's ability to sort of hit all the touch points, relate to everyone that he needs to relate to, bring everyone around points that are critical, controversial, but critical to the institution, and do that with a smiling face. And I have no doubt that on this person, my colleague's future, very near future, is a consideration for C-suite or IFC's equivalent of it. Simply because he's so good at doing that. And I think really it's a skill that maybe is a natural one, but I also think it's one that can grow. Once you understand the importance of what are the key issues, who do I need to involve to settle this issue, and how do I move this forward? I think once you're able to sort of triangulate those key issues and then sort of in a very visible, productive way, put that into action, I think it's a fantastic skill set. And I think, we could all work towards that if most of us, and I'm assuming most of us do have those ambitions to get to C-suite one day. And then the third thing, again, is just to agree with you, CJ, on the ability to discern what's critical and what's not critical. And again, coming from my husband's experience of, supporting a very busy group CEO and a couple of MDs of this large banking institution, where within a day there were 6 or 7 issues that needed to be addressed. Everything from credit to marketing. So how do we position the institution? Are we getting the right sort of visibility? Is it good visibility? Is it bad visibility? How do we, position ourselves better within the market? To employee issues, so HR, human resources issues. And so all those issues within a day are completely overwhelming, I think, if you don't have the necessary support, but also just in terms of your aptitude as a person to deal with that. So I think the ability to discern what's important, what can be delegated, and what can be completely sort of sidelined as an issue. I mean, ultimately, most things are not issues. Some things are non-issues, but are, for some reason, have gained enough traction to warrant attention at that level. And just the ability to then discern and work through those. And granted, a lot of the time, it's not the actual MD who's making those decisions. It's usually the chief of staff, the layer underneath the person. But actually, that's one of the importance of the C-suite, the ability to distill what's important for discussion at the ultimate, at sort of the highest level in the institution, I think is really important. So really, to round out, it's really just, CJ, you made the points clear. I'm just supporting them. It's just the ability to deliver value, the ability to converge people on critical issues, and then the ability to discern what's important to the institution and what's not. I think those 3 issues, once you have mastered them, would position you very well for consideration for that level of appointment.
Thank you, Zanele. Yeah, I think that second point, right? I think it's one that actually resonates, right? Because as you're speaking to the gentleman in your organization that is able to build consensus, right? Some names in my organization ran through, right? Because they're just able to, you think they're magicians. They're just able to get things done and get people to agree that, in the end, I heard you, but, we all made this decision together, and we thought it was the right decision. So I think that's key. I'm not sure if there are other questions.
I think there's one. You have highlighted skills that are necessary to position yourself within a company to stand out and thrive, such as working diligently, delivering networking, speaking up, discerning. Are there any additional skills that you think will be useful in the next 5 years for someone who's just starting out? It's a great question. You want to take us?
Yeah,
go for it.
Yeah, so go for it. Obviously you're just starting out, right? So, as in banking, we say it's up or out, right? So if you're going to be there in 5 years, it means you're in, right? So I think what's most important is, I think there are 3 things I would say, right? Obviously you have to do the hard work, right? But in addition to doing the hard work, you need to be deeply invested in the business, and it needs to come through, right? So people need to see you as someone that acts like an owner or acts like a shareholder. So be deeply invested in the business. Follow your gut, right? Most times you're right? Just follow your gut. Make those recommendations. Give those thoughts, ideas. Sometimes you assume that you're the most junior in the room, but senior management might not have thought of it, right? Or might not have thought that angle. Or by just following your gut and making a point, it's not necessarily right, but managers and your superiors can pick that up and fine tune it, right? And it's the base of actually something great. So I think, as a junior, be deeply invested in the business, follow your gut, and also pace yourself. I see, people work, but you need to listen to your body, right? And listen to, not everybody, is the same, right? So you might be a morning person, you might be an evening person, an afternoon person. As a junior, you don't have that luxury of being a morning or afternoon and evening person, right? But what I try to tell my subordinates is that you pace yourself, right? And when you pace yourself and you listen to your body, you will be able to communicate better to your managers, right? Because if your managers know that you're a morning person and they've seen that in the morning you actually do great work, right? If they let you be for 4 or 5 hours, I'll tell you, your managers will walk around that because they want great work. We all want great work, right? If I know that I one doesn't let you sleep for 2 days and the quality of work it's bad, right? If you've communicated with confidence what you rather do and they've seen value in that, then I think you need to actually be able to communicate. So I think deeply invested, follow your gut, and communicate. I think are great things that have come to mind.
I would add maybe 3 things. I'll start with the more hopefully helpful stuff in case we do run out of time. But I would sort of reflecting on my career now, things have thankfully for me sort of fallen into place. And someone asked me the other day if I would, and I'd be interested, CJ, whether you think the same way, but sort of the trajectory that's been followed from my end, whether I would have done the same thing, whether I would have had a more sort of linear path to what I'm doing now. And my answer to that is always no. I mean, things are supposed to happen exactly as they're happening. But what I do sort of reflect on now, and when people ask me sort of specifically how to get into IFC and specifically Africans, whenever they ask me this question, I always say you just have to be a lot more strategic. Strategic with your application. So there was someone I was speaking to this morning who was like, well, Zanele, I'm throwing in so many applications and I'm just not hearing anything from it. And I said, okay, but do you think your application, your CV, your cover letter is tailored for the role? And I'm not saying just by doing that, you'll get into the institution, but sometimes I think there's a certain level of complacency around, okay, well, I've applied to RMB, so let me apply to IFC with the same approach. And let me 100% guarantee you that that's not going to work at all. So I think there has to be a strategic level of thinking around how do I want to craft my career, both in terms of getting into the organization I want to get into, but also as I grow within the institution, which is coming back to, I guess, the original question asked, just around what are the skills. I would view yourself, your person, your career as sort of a toolbox, as an arsenal. And so in year 1, you add, one technical tool in there. So, okay, I've learned financial modeling. I think I'm pretty comfortable with DCF. But let me tell you, so are a lot of people who are in their 2nd, 3rd, 4th year of investment banking. So what sets you apart? What is it that I think would make me unique if I either try to go for a promotion within the institution or even if I wanted to leave the institution and go somewhere else? And so you need to start thinking of your career as this toolbox of sort of what am I adding? So is it a technical skill set? Okay, so I understand DCF. Have I had an exposure to an LBO within the institution? Would it be helpful for me to ask to do some junior work on it? And I'm being very sort of fluid here because we all work in different institutions, but I can tell you that the analysts that I'm seeing flourishing within my institution are those who have multi-regional experience. So those who can say very comfortably, oh, yes, I worked on this mining deal in South Africa. And then, oh, yeah, I actually worked on something based out of London. And yes, I went to Nigeria and I met X person and we worked on this deal. And yes, you don't always at a junior level have the comfort of being able to dictate what you can. But again, if you think of it from sort of a toolbox and an arsenal perspective, and you have sort of a 5-year view, I would take sort of an 18-month view and say, okay, so in the next 18 months, what skill set do I want to put in this toolbox? What skill set do I want to put in the toolbox? And so just think of your career as a toolbox and just make sure that there's something you're always putting in there. And whether it's sort of, again, that sort of financial modeling training or something completely out of the box. And so, for instance, one thing that I know within our institution is really gaining momentum is around sustainability. And also just generally, that's where the conversation is, right? So not just if you look at sort of what happened at COP, but generally we know that there's a lot of sort of awareness around sustainability. And we know that in 5-10 years, your CV will be almost wanting if there isn't something that's sort of sustainability linked. And maybe you may not agree with this. Think of something else that you feel is a very strong currency at the moment that would be so relevant in 5 years. And if I can get exposure in the next 18 months to that specific field, then that would really make me exceptional. And I, again, add that to your toolbox, So the only thing I would say is just think of your career strategically, be very intentional about what you're trying to grow into. And then again, just populate that toolbox until you're at a point where you're like, I am maxed out in terms of deals, in terms of region, in terms of products, until basically you're so marketable that whether you decide to stay in the institution or you leave, you're actually what I call sort of hot stock, is the first thing. And then the second thing is obviously the quality of the network. And I won't spend too long on it. We all know the importance of it. But again, coming back to Africans, and this is something I feel very passionately about, simply because I think in a world that, as we know, and even last week showed us that, the world's is not always kind to the continent, right? For a whole lot of issues, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's employment issues, whatever it is, the world is not always kind to, I think, the continent and its people. And so you really, again, need to bring the same level of intentionality that I talked about in terms of the toolbox to your network. And you may not always have success in reaching out to that sort of hotshot New York banker in that hotshot investment bank that you really want to work at. But reach out to CJ or reach out to myself. And I really do. And this is something I feel so passionately about. But I really think it's time for us to leverage our own networks, because actually maybe 20 years ago, there weren't that many investment bankers in Africa. But I believe we have a strong enough network for people to comfortably reach out to others on LinkedIn, wherever else you need to, and say, hi, can I have an informational interview? Because actually, I really want to grow my organization, but I'm lost. And can I plug that in? And I guarantee you 80% of the time, you'll get a positive response. So for me, leverage that network and start with the continent. Given that sometimes the world is unkind to us. And then the third thing is resist temptation to job hop. And that's a controversial opinion, because I also know that we live in a world, and I appreciate it, and I also live by it. I don't believe you should stay in an unhappy place personally, but of course professionally, if it's not helping you. If you find yourself that you're miserable, you're just not growing, there's just no exit for you, then absolutely entertain the idea of exploring other options. But I also think there is a temptation when you're told you're wonderful, sort of this hot shot that I talked about when you're hot stock, for you to keep moving around. And I think there's a lot to be said about laying roots and learning the trade. And again, if you want to build this toolbox of yours, you're not going to build it by working in 4, 5, 6 different investment banks over 6 years. And so you have to find that balance. But that's the one thing I would encourage, especially as sort of young, talented Africans. There will be a lot of people who want to bring you on the team. And I'm not saying you shouldn't entertain those conversations, but just be sure that you're moving for strategic reasons. CJ has fallen. Yeah, we have lost CJ, unfortunately, at the worst of times. But Victoria, it looks like we have to wrap up the session anyway. So should I go ahead and do that? So really, it's just to thank you. Sorry, based on the screen I'm seeing, I have no idea whether anyone has joined this session. It may have just been a conversation between CJ and myself. But we're hoping that for the very few that did join, that you guys have, you've taken something away from this conversation. So really, we appreciate you spending time with us. Obviously, we appreciate the Reach team, JR, who's a friend of many years of mine, for putting this together. The one thing I would encourage, and also in CJ's absence, and I'm sure he would agree with it, is that reach out to us on LinkedIn, and let's have the conversations. Let's expand the conversations we've had today, and specifically on the touch points that I've made just around sort of deepening your network and just making sure that you're targeted in your growth and building that toolbox. I'm very happy and able and willing to take requests and informational interviews as needed. So really, just to thank everyone, all the best, and let's just let's lean into sort of the African excellence that we need to be seeing. Oh, CJ, you're still in the. Yeah, I see you typing. Like, do you intend to come back and say goodbye? Oh. Victoria, is it possible to bring CJ back in at least? So, okay, he says it's okay. So with that, thank you, everyone. Oh, he's back.
Okay. No, I got caught off.
Okay,
I guess.
no problem. I've made
yeah.
promises in your absence. I hope you don't mind, but it was
What
really
did
just
you-
encouraging everyone.
What
It
did
was
you
just
bind us
encouraging
to?
everyone to reach out to both of us, actually, if they're interested. But go ahead, please, with your.
Yeah,
final-
no, that's fine. That's fine. I think I agree with all you've said, Zanella. I think a point, that you actually raise is, not job hopping, right, and not get ahead of yourself, right. I just wanted to reiterate that point, and then obviously, keep having options, right. It's good to be sought after, but then you use that to actually figure out where you are in your organization and actually see if there are other roles within the organization, because you have options and you can actually be that in your organization, right? Especially if you want to get to C-suite. But, for the risk of repeating all you said, thanks for listening, and do feel free to reach out, right? If you don't reach out, the answer is no. If you reach out, it's 50-50. So I think a 50-50 bet is something that you should take, and all the best in your career and in life.
Wonderful. Thank you, CJ. It was
Bye-bye.
lovely meeting you.
Same here, Samila. Take care. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everyone, please go to the homeroom where JR will be giving closing remarks.